Hello guys, welcome back to another lovely trading video. In this one we're going to be doing some stock analysis on Moderna. Now, why are we doing it on Moderna? And that's very quickly, it's come into a great buying opportunity and looks like it will become even to a better buying opportunity. So that's quickly why we're going to be going over Moderna, and then we'll go through our normal analysis route. So firstly, is there any gaps that need to be filled? So if we go over to a yearly chart, you can see any gaps that it has created, at least back here, have all been filled. However, we do have some more recent ones that are yet to be filled. So this one around $61 needs to be filled. We have created, or did create a gap here, but you can see it pulled back. Just to retrace that, we have created a new gap up here, created a gap to there, and I guess even a gap to here. But one thing I do like to keep an eye out on, and I always like to say, is when you're looking for the bigger moves like we would on Moderna, because it's coming into a good buying opportunity, we don't look for these smaller gap fills. So for example, this 340, 385, we don't care as much about. We're looking more at the bigger gap fill, and the one that stands out to more traders, and that's the 408. Even a gap fill to kind of 375 could also be a good level. We'll actually place that down, just because that's a noticeable gap. The ones that don't work as efficiently are usually, let's say for example this one here, where it's not as clear of a gap. It's not like this one here, where obviously we have a big gap in price. This is counted as a gap down because it opened down at 309 and closed at 340, but even on that day, this candle still kind of touched within the previous day candle, and when you have that, it doesn't stand out to as many people, so you don't tend to get a bigger reaction at those levels. So that's why I'm always more focused on the clear gaps. So in this case, yeah, 375, 385, or just say 375 to 408 are those key gap ones that I'll be looking at, and then also to the downside, the 260 is another key level. Now what you'll see as well is that it will line up, as you do with the standard deviations. They show you key buying zones, and they tend to usually line up with a key area of support and or resistance. So in this case, you can see on the daily chart, this gap fill lines up exactly with the first deviation. That's not so much of a coincidence because you see it all the time. And that's why standard deviations, even if you don't have them on your chart, they are still heavy areas of buying pressure, because they usually line up with some other key area. And in this case, yeah, that would be that gap fill where most likely a lot of buying pressure will come in. So those are the key ones obviously to be looking out for. We're going to quickly delete these more medium ones, for the main reason being we don't want to clutter this chart with so many support and resistance lines. So the key ones we'll be looking at is 260/261 and 408 as the gap fill areas. Now you'll notice as well is that Moderna is right now at around $300, and has tapped the first deviation on the 4 hour. This is not only a good buying opportunity, but it's low risk, and that's why you'll see a lot of selling buying pressure come into here, and to be honest, we'll most likely get a at least a small bounce off here. So for right now, I would have a price target of at least around 350. I see this bounce happening to 350, even if it's going to continue down. So that's kind of the key level I would be now if you are long, and even getting long now is still considered somewhat of a low risk. But I personally will be waiting for that push down further. I do think it'll come back, test this 350, break down lower, and 260 is where I personally will be getting in with a position. For the main reason being, like I said, it's the gap fill area and the first deviation, so high probability that we will get a strong bounce and or reversal at that area. So then what other targets are we looking at? So obviously if we're getting long at this 261, our price target where we want to lock in the majority of our profit, I do think will be around 405 to kind of 4010, because that is not only the gap fill, but you'll see it lines up with the statistical mean on the 4 hour. And yes, you could wait for it to come up to the first deviation, let's say, but the only thing on Moderna that puts me off with holding on that long is it previously ran up so high on obviously vaccination news and all of that, that it's more of a hype move, and when you have something like that, you're not as certain that it will come and re-tap that all-time high, at least in the near future. So usually when I see that, I look more for a key level where it may push back up to, and is a kind of a lower risk area to be locking in profits. So in this case, it would be 408. However, if you want to make sure you're kind of being even more safe and you don't want to be in the trade for long, let's say, key areas to be locking in profits would be, if you're getting in at 260, then 320/315 would be a good level, because that would be the half deviation on the daily, and you could even push all the way up to the statistical mean on the daily at around 375. So those are kind of all key levels that you may be wanting to look into locking profits if you're buying at either of these low risk buy zones. Then what other levels will we be looking at? So these ones I'm going to put out, most likely won't see them in the near future, so by the time they even did come into these levels, we would probably have a new video out, but we'll just mark them up just so you get a clear idea. And that would be 191 and 150. Again, good buying opportunity. If it was to push down that low, you would most likely get a bounce off these levels, and it wouldn't be unlikely to also see a reversal at one of these levels. So that's always the thing to be looking at these levels, is you can always get a small bounce play. 99% of the time it will provide a good bounce play, at least, and then a lot of the time they will be reversal zones. So that's usually the two things you want to be looking out for of this, depending on how you're trading it. If you're day trading, you'll probably be looking more for the small bounce. You should most likely just trade that intraday. Otherwise, if you're looking to get it as more of a reversal play, and get those larger, like in this case, nearly $100 move, then obviously you would need to turn that into a swing trade, because it would be very unlikely for it to make that move in one day. Obviously, we do have the deviations down at $83 and $40. I'm going to ignore those because can't see Moderna going that low, at least in the near future. And even if it did go that low, yes, it would be considered a good buying opportunity, but I'd be very scared if it was that low, because I would be thinking, well, why is it? So if it did ever push down to kind of this 83 in the near future, if I was to get long, I would be waiting for somewhat of a confirmation. For example, coming into this level, probably using something like a 9 or 20 EMA on the daily chart and waiting for a close back above. And so by that, I'll quickly show you what I mean. So if we get a let's say a moving average exponential, that's a 9 EMA. Obviously right now on the daily we are below the 9 EMA, which is somewhat indicating a downwards trend. So if it did come down to this 80, I would be waiting for a close above. For example, let's say this was our level, it comes in, tests here, and then I'd be waiting for like one of these 2 green candles to consider it a buy, because then it's showing somewhat buying pressure. Then to the upside, don't think it will be breaking an all-time high, but if it does, what are our levels? 483, which is just below the all-time high, and then above the all-time high would be 512. Obviously you're going to get some resistance at the psychological 500 and all-time high of around $500, and then obviously if it continues even higher, as always we have these levels. But if it was to push this high, we would have an updated video, because these deviations most likely would have moved. If you do see Moderna back at $500, these levels, ignore them, because they won't be valid anymore. These deviation lines, they move once on the 4 hour, once every 4 hours of the market being open, and on the daily they change once every day. So they calculate it using all the data, but if you do, for example, have Moderna coming back up at this $500 level, then a lot more data would be on the high end, which would in hand push the deviations up higher, so the targets would be different. So that's why you usually see if a stock moves rapidly, for example on Moderna, where here, we weren't moving too crazy, but this push here, the deviations moved very quickly when coming into these levels, because the data is changing so much. It's used to calculating data within this zone. When it broke out of this zone, it had to change quite quickly, and that's why you would have seen, if you watched a video a few months back when Moderna was at this kind of $500 level, it was right now I think this $500 level was around the 3rd or 4th deviation, and that's because, and now it's not. The reason for that is the data is changing. So that's one thing to be keeping an eye out. Let's say if you're seeing this in a week or two, if it's been moving slowly, if Moderna's moving slowly, then these levels will be somewhat still accurate. But if you're having strong pushes, and by that I mean you're having a few days of maybe like a 5% move, these levels will be off and there will be a new video. So that's kind of the main breakdown on Moderna, on key levels. If you want to take a picture of the levels or whatever, they're there. We're going to quickly wipe it though, just to go over the key point of the video. Key buy level will be 260. Obviously right now it's considered low risk, but the key level I want is 260. And where would I be locking in profits? 370 will definitely lock in some there. And then that other key area to be locking in profits, it would be my higher push would be 408. So hope you enjoyed the video, hope to see you in the next one, and that's it. Peace.